Hi everyone, today I'm going to show you how to make animation advertisement. To create the animation, I will use AI and After Effects Z2 software. Before I start, let's see the final advertisement that I've done. So today I will show you the process from the beginning to the end of the first scene in After Effects. Firstly, open the AI. I had already created some layers that includes background, the earth, the air. When you create the different things in AI, just remember that different objects should be in different layers. And now just save it. Now I am going to import all layers to After Effects. Open the software, click File and move to Import and choose File. When you select the project, remember change the footage to composition and retain layer size. Then click Open. Now drag the composition to the timeline, double-click it, and I have all layers here. Now I'm going to hide the earth and the surface, just keep the background and the ear. Click the arrow, I have the transform. Firstly, I set the angle point, position, and scale. You can move here to make the time easy to control. And now at the first second, set the anchor point, position, and scale again. As I want to make the ear change from small to big, so at the beginning I change the scale to 0. Now I want the ear disappear, so move the current time to 3rd second and change the scale to about 10,000. Now let's see how it works. Well, it looks good, so let's move to the earth. During this time, I want the earth appear. So firstly, I drag the both earth and surface layers and align to the current timeline. Open these two layers transform and set both layers anchor point, position, scale, and rotation. And then move the current timeline between 2 seconds and 3rd second, and then set the same transform. Now move the line back to the first transform and then select the both layers. To rotate it, move the mouse to the top and choose Rotation tool. Now we can directly rotate the earth on the composition. Just make sure the current time of this step is at the second transform. Now let's have a look about the change from start to now. Now let's move to the first scene. First of all, open AI. I draw some trees here. And remember that different objects should be in different layers. You can see that the tree of most right, the layer name is 1 and the next is 2. That's because I make each tree with an order from right to the left. Now back to After Effects. Open File, move to Import, select File. After choose the project, change the Import As, and then drag the tree composition to the timeline. Double-click the composition. I got all layers here. Now I'm going to hide all the layers except the floor. You can see I just keep the light floor and back floor, these two layers. Now back to the main composition. Firstly, I want to make the annual ring smaller and move to the right. So open the composition and set the anchor point position scale, and then move the timeline a little bit and set the transform again. At this step, change the scale to 35 and move the annual ring to the lower right. And you can adjust the transform time as you like. Now I'm going to set the appear time of the floor. Double-click the tree composition, and the first step is to set the anchor point position and scale. Just make sure when you move the layers, both of two should be selected. Then move the current timeline to the first second, and then set both layers transform again. Next, move the current timeline to the beginning, and then move both layers to the bottom. Well, now let's go back to the main composition. You can see the change is very strange, and these two compositions cannot match very well. Even I drag the tree composition a little bit front. Therefore, what we have to do now is to make these two objects stop at the same time. Now I drag the current timeline to the stop of the annual ring position. Then back to tree composition. Drag the last transform I've set, align to the current timeline. Now the change is better, but maybe too fast. So I just move the transform back a little bit. And also back to the tree composition to move the last transform aligned to the current timeline. The annual ring here seems a little bit bigger, so I just select the annual composition layer and drag it smaller. Now back to the tree composition. We can start make the tree appear. Firstly, let's find the first tree. Then drag this layer aligned to the current timeline. After set the first tree, now I'm going to decide the time for the appear of each tree. Make sure that the time distance between the tree is equal. Now I'm going to move to the second tree. Drag the beginning of the layer aligned to the current timeline. Then move the current timeline to the next same distance time. Then repeat this step until all the layers have been moved. Ensure that the time distance is same. Now I got all the trees layers appear, and the peer time between each tree seems fine. Next, I want to import the swirl layers. Now open the AI. Before I import the file, I have to delete the background because I just need the swirl graphic, so delete and save it. So back to After Effects. Click File, move to Import and choose File. After choose the swirl file, change the import as. This time I open the swirl layer, then just drag the layer into the tree composition. Now I got the swirl here, but the size is too big, so just hold the Shift key and drag it smaller. Then move the swirl to lower right. I want the swirl appear after all the trees have shown, so I move the current timeline, then move the swirl layer aligned to it. Next, open the transform. At the beginning, I want to move the swirl to the most right. Then set the anchor point position, scale, and rotation. Then move the timeline a little bit. Drag the swirl move to the first tree. Choose Rotation tool, rotate the swirl to make the swirl have a filling action. Every time the swirl down must rotate the swirl up in the next transform. So I move the timeline, then set the position and anchor point rotation, then rotate the swirl up. Now move the current timeline a little bit and set the scale, position, anchor point, and rotation. Now just move the swirl down a little bit to the second tree and then move the timeline to the next same distance time and then set the transform and rotate the swirl down. To move the third tree, firstly move the timeline, then set the same transform, and then drag it to the third tree. To make the swirl move from right to left, just repeat this action. What we should be note is make sure the time distance is same. And don't forget rotate the swirl. Now I got the move action of swirl from right to left. Next I will make the fall of each tree. Firstly, let's find the first tree's layer, and then open the transform. Now, move the current timeline back to the first cut action by swirl. At this current time, set the first three layers anchor point, position, scale, and rotation. And move the current time front or back, it's up to you. Then set the transform again, and move the timeline back, and rotate the first tree down. You can see that when the first tree down, the floor is behind the tree. So let's move the light floor layer up to the front of the first tree's layer. Now move the current timeline to stop at the second tree, and use the same way to set the second tree's transform. After it's back to rotate the tree down. Now move the current timeline. Then let's find the third tree and set the transform and move the timeline back to rotate the tree again. So just repeat this step until all the trees done. Make sure the rotate action is in the back of the transform. Now all the process for making scene 1 have completed. Let's see how it works.